Okay, people, so let's go straight into it. Here is a figure, and here is the question. Describe the distribution of countries that have literacy rates of 81 to 100% in figure 2. Now, most people get about a mark here, but they don't get the full 2 marks, and it's a really easy 1 mark to get. So have a look at my model answer. So let's have a look. Before we look at my model answer, you can see that obviously you look at the figure very quickly, you can see that it's the darker green over here, 81 to 100. You can see the countries that have obviously the darker shades. Now, my first mark, how do I get it? In the north of Africa, so you have to actually use direction here. So in the north of Africa, we've got countries like Algeria and Libya who have literacy rates, so that should get you a mark because you use direction and you use country names. And sometimes people leave it at that. You need to give another one in a completely different direction. We've got Gabon here actually, but I'm gonna go for similarly in the south of Africa. We've got countries like Botswana, so I've just gone for one country here, who also has a really high literacy rate. So that should get you the full 2 marks. Let's move on to another question. This one's regarding energy now. So factors that affect energy supply. So thinking about actually if countries are able to produce their own energy, what might limit them, what might affect them in being able to kind of produce that successfully. So in other words, the question could look at like, oh, why is energy supply limited in some countries? Now you could pick a range of reasons, but they're kind of almost broken down into these kind of certain sub criteria. So it could be a physical reason, physically that, why physically they can't go out and actually have a good energy supply. Well, actually some areas like the Arctic have harsh climates. It'd be physically impossible. Well, it is possible, but it's like really difficult to go out to the Arctic and extract oil. Also, it's going to be very expensive. It's a very remote area, it's hard to access, so that's quite short and simple. Economically, so thinking about money, what might that be an issue with? So again, we know that in some countries, like in very poor countries, like LICs, it's just too expensive for them to kind of exploit that kind of energy. They've got the potential for energy, but they lack the wealth to extract them. So they don't, they can't afford. I would go into it by saying the LICs can't afford the machinery and technology to exploit it, such as oil rigs, so they don't look into it. Okay, so that's an economic factor. Political factors, so thinking politically, some countries are very unstable, especially in these regions where they have a lot of energy. So let's go into it. The Middle East, I give an example. The Middle East has lots of reserves of oil and gas. However, we know that from political issues, such as civil wars, we know that there's civil wars been going on in, let's say, Syria and other areas, that could limit energy supply to some countries. And as some countries want to avoid relying on imported energy from these war-torn regions, because again, it could be very unreliable. It can affect the price of oil as well. So people don't want to rely on these politically kind of almost torn countries. This is how the exam question could look like. Outline one reason why energy supply can be limited from some countries. So I would go into it, say, energy supply can be limited because they are too expensive to exploit and look into. So I've gone for this economic one. For example, LICs in Africa lack the wealth and infrastructure to invest into machinery such as oil rigs to extract energy such as oil. So again, you could pick any one of these guys.